LCBO, okay, so this happened for a hot second. The LCBO mandated everybody has to give their ID in order to access these specific 6 stores in Northern Ontario. We're just trialing it. It's just a trial, like just the tip, okay? Just a little tiny bit. We're not even going to do anything. It's nothing. It's nothing. Nothing. And so that happened, and I tagged it, and I was like, holy F, this is very bad. Very, very bad indeed. 3 hours later, Doug Ford crushed it and said, no, that's not happening. So I'll show that to you. That was a roller coaster yesterday. That was an emotional roller coaster for me. Sugar tax. They are doing a sugar tax. Yes, they are. And of course, it's in BC. Of course it is, right? So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. We got to start at the lawsuits. Yes, multiple lawsuits. Keith Wilson says Tamara Lich, Freedom Convoy leader, files against Trudeau Liberals. So this is Western Standard reporting this, and they're going into just a little bit of detail. Freedom Convoy leaders Tamara Lich, Chris Barber, Tom Mazzaro, Danny Bulford, and others have filed a lawsuit against Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal government 2 years ago to the date. So yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of the invocation of the Emergencies Act. The War Measures Emergencies Act was invoked on February 14th, 2022, a move now declared illegal and unnecessary on protesters downtown Ottawa. Under what was formerly known as the War Measures Act, Trudeau and Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland froze bank accounts of demonstrators and citizens who merely donated to the convoy. They also sent the RCMP Special Forces into the streets with their horses, where 2 people were trampled. Journalist Alexi L. of Rebel News was shot point blank in the leg with a rubber pellet. Lich and Barber have been on trial for charges of mischief and obstruction, among others, since September 5th, 2023. Convoy attorney Keith Wilson announced the convoy organizers' lawsuit Wednesday morning on Twitter on the 2-year anniversary of the federal government illegally invoking the War Measures Act against its citizens and targeting key protesters in Ottawa by freezing their bank accounts. Today, Tamara Lich, Chris Barber, Tom Mazzaro, Danny Bulford, and other protesters who were targeted by Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland have filed lawsuits against the federal government, Wilson wrote. So, and he continues, Section 24 of our Charter Rights and Freedoms gives Canadians the right to sue their governments for damages when charter rights are violated, noted Wilson. Doing so affirms the seriousness of respecting charter rights and is intended to deter future governments from breaching Canadians' fundamental rights. The lawsuits seek $2 million in damages. The government shouldn't be the ones being sued. It should be Trudeau and the people who did this, Chrystia Freeland, et cetera, et cetera. The government, like, I pay for the government. You pay for the government. That's taxpayer dollars, right? That's weird. Like, you should be able to sue the government. Yes. But the people who are on the hook for the payout should not be the government. It should be the people who did it. So, and maybe there should be some kind of stopgap. Like, if you are an MP, you get some kind of MP insurance or something like that. Like, you can pay into the MP insurance. You know, there's got to be some kind of measure to make sure that the MP themselves isn't going to be necessarily bankrupt from frivolous lawsuits. Like, there's got to be balance, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, when you shut down people's businesses, like, there are heartbreaking stories of people who lost their businesses. There are heartbreaking stories of people who have lost family members, death, right? Like, these things are a big deal. So how do you quantify that in law? At this point in time, you sue the government and we give you tax dollars. I mean, not to say that I don't want people getting made whole as best money can make them whole, but it seems like a poor substitute for actually dealing with the people who made the decisions and screwed it up to give out taxpayer dollars for their screw up, right? So it's a difficult balance is all I'm trying to say. Chris says, breaking historic lawsuit filed against Trudeau, Freeland, and others. Please share far and wide. Join the movement for accountability. Support the historic lawsuit against Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada. Donate now. The Accountability Project. So this is a different one. I believe this is a different one. And this is from, I can't read the legal paper is too small when I made it big there, and it's difficult to lead. The Loberg Ector LLP. And they commenced proceedings in the Ontario Superior Court of Justice on behalf of 20 victims of the Trudeau government's unconstitutional misuse of the provisions of the Emergency Act in February 2022. Plaintiffs in this article seek compensation and related relief arising from the unjustified and unconstitutional actions of the Liberal government, as well as the actions of certain police agencies and Canadian financial institutions who followed the unlawful orders of the Liberal government, and other defendants who participated in or promoted these actions. So there you go. I'm sorry that I don't have more information on this. Both of the lawsuits were I thought they were both the same lawsuit being, being promoted at the same, like just by different people, like, oh, here's that lawsuit, right? And I thought it was one single lawsuit. And I saw after, I saw later on in the day that it was actually two different lawsuits. So I just wanted to make sure that, your understanding there are two different lawsuits. Jason says Calgary law firm representing 20 victims of the Emergency Act measures seeks 35 million in damages from Trudeau and others arising from the unjustified and unconstitutional actions of the Liberal government. So that's the one I was just reading. So there's one with Tamara Lich and one with 20 people from being represented by a Calgary firm. Sorry if I've got that wrong, and if I do get it wrong, I'll inform you as much as I can tomorrow. Things were just happening quite well. There was a lot of news yesterday with regards to all of this, so I was just kind of collecting it all up, and sometimes it can be muddy. Sovereign territory of Tim Toria says 2 years later, on the anniversary of Trudeau's Liberals and Singh's NDP's unconstitutional evocation of an act meant to use for use in times of war, several Canadian politicians are being personally sued. So that's good. No amnesty, like hashtag Emergencies Act, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think public health, anybody who got on to Twitter and said it's safe and effective, like there should be consequences. I don't know how to hit the balance between, because these people were told to say this, and who told them to say this, right? And so to me, finding out the shape of the whole thing is important. And having these people no longer in office is important. And I don't necessarily want to completely destroy their lives. Like, enough lives have been destroyed. You know what I'm saying? But I want them held accountable. I want them to repay what they can repay. You know, like there should be a consequence. It shouldn't be you get off scot-free. It shouldn't be they maintain their job and their social standing. I don't care so much about. They shouldn't maintain their position in power. They shouldn't maintain their elected position. They shouldn't maintain their public health position. In fact, we should probably abolish public health. But regardless of all of that, I think that it's really tough to hit the balance of what people expect, what people want from justice. You know, some people like Justin Trudeau to be in jail for the rest of his life. Justin Trudeau to be, dealt with even harsher than that. People have been calling for. I don't know. But it's one of those things where I don't think the Canadian public has an appetite for that, despite the loss of life, despite the loss of business and economic activity, despite the rampant theft of taxpayer dollars. I don't think there's an appetite for it. And I'm not saying, we should. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it's interesting because most Canadians want a balance of justice and humanity, right? Fairness, something fair, right? Like something fair. But what's fair? I mean, how can you make people whole who've lost somebody? Or how can you make people whole? Like, Without Papers Pizza. His whole business went under for something that was completely unlawful, completely illegal, and nobody's got any consequences for it. So how do you do that? How do you strike that balance? And I wish I knew. But because I do advocate for consequences, but I don't know up to what extent the consequences should be, right? And I know there are people who say absolute, right? If you were responsible for even the loss of one life, you should lose your life. Other people say life in prison. Other people say, big fines and loss of the ability to hold office or anything like that. But, whatever, live and let live their lives and whatever. Some, jail time of some kind. I don't know. What do you think the appetite is? What do you think the appetite is really by the Canadian public? I'm interested. I don't know. And it's difficult to tell because some people are angry. And then those people who are angry and who are calling for the most extreme kind of repercussions, long jail sentences, things like that, tend to get ignored. I don't know. Tend to get maligned, tend to get pushed off to the side, to be treated as if that's fringe. And I know that people want justice. And I know that people want, because you can't have a democracy where people flagrantly break the law, but because they're in government, they're allowed to. You can't have that. There has to be consequences, right? And it's just a matter of hitting the balance. And I guess you have to let the courts hit that balance, right? Like that's what we have courts for, I suppose. But it sucks that our courts are completely and utterly compromised. Clobberin is from Quebec. I believe she's from Quebec. And she is an ex-lawyer, she says in her Twitter account. Ex-lawyer, ex-advocate. Advocate is a lawyer, in fact. She says, mission accomplished. The Court of Appeal of Quebec sends sends, in its judgment rendered today on February 14th, 24, a clear message to the lower courts of justice so that they assume their constitutional public responsibilities to protect the people against the abuse of government power. Here are the extracts from this judgment. I have placed a red vertical line where the Court of Appeal sends the clear message to the judges of Quebec. Mission accomplished. I can now continue my appeal to abolish the Quebec Public Health Act before the Superior Court of Quebec with greater confidence in obtaining justice for the people and for the future of children. Note that the Court of Appeal refuses my appeal from an interlocutory, non-final judgment of the Superior Court. I have underlined in black what I disagree with. More details in upcoming interviews. So she's going to be on different Canadian shows, and this is in French, so I cannot read it. So apologies about that. I'm not quite that good to read and translate French on the fly yet, but it's interesting. So this is the 2-year anniversary of this announcement. Remember this guy, and when they were enforcing all of the crackdowns that started, and this is Chief Bell, Second Chief Bell, Lieutenant Chief Bell. I can't remember exactly what his position was, but here he is.
If you are involved in this protest, we will actively look to identify you and follow up with financial sanctions and criminal charges. Absolutely.
Government thug, chief government thug. Here is Pierre Poilievre. We have to talk about Arrive scam. Should we talk about roads? Let's talk about roads really quickly. The Arrive scam thing is a massive, massive deal. This roads thing is actually just kind of funny. And because it's funny, so yesterday, Minister Guilbeault had an announcement in Quebec. And during the announcement, he was claiming that there was no big money, no more money, no federal money for big infrastructure projects for the municipalities like roads. Roads not happening because you could walk. Walking is also known as active transportation. If you see active transportation, that's walking or bicycling, by the way. So if somebody's saying, oh, well, we're just working on an active transportation solution, that means we want you to walk. So just so you're aware, lots of municipalities are using this language, by the way. It's to obfuscate what they're trying to do. Regardless of all of that, Minister Guilbeault had to walk back what he said, and the news is having none of it, which is kind of funny. They say, I can read it back to you. I can read back to you what you said. Here is Minister Guilbeault and a little bit of combative news interaction. Here we go.
With transit, including investment in electrification of transportation. That's not what I said.
Yes, it is.
Wait.
I can read it back to you.
What I have said is that the solutions to our transport challenge pass by many different things, including massive investment in public transit, including investment in electrification of transportation. And of course we're funding roads. We have programs to fund roads. What we have said, and maybe I should have been more specific in the past, is that we don't have funds for large projects like the Troisième Lien that the CAQ has been trying to do for many years.
Our government has made the decision to stop investing in new road infrastructure.
I just told you that I should have been more specific in that statement and specified that it was project like the Troisième Lien, which myself and many of my colleagues have said many times that the federal government had no funds for a project like this. And you can look back and you will find numerous statements like myself and many other cabinet colleagues on this specifically.
They read the comment back and he's like, no, I should have been more specific than it was specific. He was specific. Our government has no more money for road infrastructure, according to the news industry, right? And so that's interesting. Here is him again being raked over the coals. Somebody's put music behind this, not in this clip, but I saw another clip and there was music and I thought, why would you do this? Anyway, here is Mr. Guilbeault again answering this question.
This morning, I stood beside you, you said, we don't have funds for large projects. We're talking about funding for roads. You said, we don't have funds for large projects. Your government's spending $160 million to widen the Trans-Canada up in Minister O'Regan's place. What do you mean when you say you don't have funds for large projects to fund road networks in this country?
Thank you very much for your question, David. As opposed to the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, who seemed annoyed every time one of you find people.
He's been chatting with Chrystia Freeland on how to answer questions. So he's He's just politicking. It's
Ask him a
ridiculous.
question. I, in fact, think it's a privilege to be asked a question by you as a federal cabinet minister, and I'm happy to take your questions. I was happy to answer your question this morning, David, and I'm happy to answer your question this afternoon. What I said is, and I specified that I should have been more specific in that conference that I gave last week in Montreal. I was referring specifically to projects like the Troisième Lien, but in that same conference, I specified that we still have funds, obviously, to maintain and enhance our road network across the country. But I was talking specifically about projects like the Troisième Lien that the CAQ government in Quebec wants to move forward with, which is something myself and many of my Quebec cabinet colleagues have said time and time again. This is not a new policy at all.
Right. So, I've not made news here saying we're not going to federally fund roads anymore. No. That was just a terrible misunderstanding. Yeah, right. Sure. Right. And if nobody had said boo, they would have stopped funding roads. Here is Pierre Poilievre. Now we're into a Rive scam. And it's interesting because the scandal keeps getting bigger. $250 million. $250 million. That's a lot of cheddar, right? Here's Pierre Poilievre. And at the end, we're going to watch the whole thing. At the end, the speaker says you have to withdraw that last statement. That's unparliamentary language. And Poilievre clarifies. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Here we go.
The Prime Minister's Arrive scam is now flailing out of control. Today, revelations from a Joël Denis Bellevance that one Arrive scan company received $250 million in contracts. Let's get this straight. It's a company with 4 employees, headquartered in the basement of a tiny cottage. They got IT contracts even though they admit they do no IT work. $250 million. WTF.
Hear, hear. I'm going to ask the honourable opposition leader, please, to withdraw that comment and to use parliamentary language, please.
Where's the funds?
So he's clarifying, right? WTF is not what you think it means. It is where's the funds. So interesting. Lots of money. Gone. Just poof, gone. And Stacey says, Poilievre, what was the final cost of Arrive scam? And Trudeau responds, you're all just conspiracy theorists because we don't want to talk about anything to do with finance because, the budget balances itself when you just hand it over to consultants. Here's Poilievre.
The app was supposed to cost 80 grand, said the Prime Minister. Now it's at least 60 million, but we don't know for sure because of missing documents. What is the full and final cost of Arrive scam?
Here. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've addressed these questions, but I will highlight that part of the Conservatives' attacks on this situation is because they deeply deplore all the measures we put in to keep Canadians safe during the pandemic. We remember how they gave in to conspiracy theories, spreading anti-vaxxer conspiracies, standing against measures that we needed to put forward to keep Canadians safe. Yes.
The app was supposed to cost 80 grand, said the Prime.
It's a big pivot. He doesn't want to talk about the money wasted on Arrive scam, so he pivots to anything but, right? And here's Pierre Poilievre again. Now, this is politicking. I'm just trying to show you that first you say it in the House of Commons, then you say it in a meme, and then you say it again, right? And so this is Poilievre, different memes, different tweets, different times of day. This one's from 9:36 p.m. on Valentine's Day. Poilievre says, since 2015, Trudeau's government has given $250 million of your tax dollars to one company with less than 5 employees. That company was at the heart of Arrive scam. What the heck happened here? Signed to investigate. So that's interesting. And here it is again. Poilievre says $250 million since 2015 to one company with less than 5 employees at the heart of Arrive scam. Where did our tax dollars go? Signed to investigate. Now, again, it plays well, and I'm sure it collects a lot of signatures for the CPC to then raise money on, help us fight this thing that you obviously indicated that you care about. And that helps them shape their messaging and all sorts of stuff. Everybody's doing this. It's nothing new, but the petitions don't do anything. The petitions aren't going to change anything, unfortunately. If you think the Conservatives are going to change something, maybe agreeing to get their messaging and stuff would help them get into office, etc. But again, fundamentally, I think the petition is just a way to collect people's information. Larry Brock says, breaking news, new reporting reveals GC Strategies has received over $250 million in contracts from the Trudeau government since 2015. This two-person company that works out of their basement was paid nearly $20 million on a Rive scam alone. More to come. And I think that Andy Lee had something that said even more money pre-2015 under a different name. And I think that that's just super interesting as well, right? Senator Husaka says, the culture of corruption runs deep in the Trudeau government. Today, I asked why all contracts with the company behind the Arrive scam rot aren't being investigated by the RCMP and the AG, and why the ministers involved haven't resigned. Watch. It's 3 minutes, and it's unsatisfying because the Senate never really, I mean, they talk in circles, and the Senate Majority Leader, Gold, is terrible. It's just terrible. Gov.exe is corrupt, is noting how much all of these scandals are costing the public purse. That's taxpayer dollars. And SNC Lavalin scandal, $50 million. We Charity scandal, $900 million. Remember, they wanted to give them $1 billion so they could administer youth work or something like that? What? Buy another plaque, guys. Arrive scam scandal, $60 million. Buying stocks a company that doesn't exist, that's $2 billion. Setting up phony infrastructure projects, that's $10 billion plus dollars. Blaming conspiracy theorists for government accountability, priceless. Some things just can't be stolen, but for everything else, there's Justin Trudeau liberals. Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that it's weirdly accurate. It's unbelievable how much money they've just been able to funnel out under different kind of cloaks, right? Like the Ukraine cloak. Oh, we've got to stand by Ukraine. We've really got to fight this war for Ukraine. Okay, sure, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. It is a very concerning situation when so much money can be walked out the door so easily. So easily. Justin Trudeau says the vandalism at the Islamic Center of Cambridge and the rise in Islamophobia across the country is alarming, abhorrent, and unacceptable. I strongly condemn this incident and stand with the Muslim communities against such hate. We must confront and combat Islamophobia together. So this is false. This is absolutely false, because Justin Trudeau is silent when Christian churches are burned. Nothing said. But as soon as something happens at a Islamic Center in Cambridge, he's all over it. And here people are noticing, right? Lauren says, not a word about churches? Didn't think so. And so this happened yesterday. I showed video of this the other day on my show. So the Regina Church that was burned to the ground, right? So unbelievable stuff from Justin Trudeau, who takes our tax dollars. And the accountability piece again, right? How do you find that balance? Here is Australia. And this is from February 10th, Sky News, Australia, 2024, February 10th. And I just thought this was super funny. Fits right here because Justin Trudeau is being noticed for how much Canadians, how high our emotions are about Justin Trudeau. Here we go.
Else whose woke leftist policies will hopefully see him consigned to the dustbin of history is, of course, the appalling Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Cuba. Sorry, my mistake. Touch of the Joe Bidens there. I mean, Prime Minister of Canada. Although it's an easy mistake to make, after all, young Justin and his brother Michael were warmly welcomed to Cuba by the dictator Fidel Castro. Seen here, Fidel holding Michael Trudeau alongside Mum, the charming Margaret Trudeau. Shocking, of course, have been the scurrilous and wholly unfounded suggestions that Margaret Trudeau may well have been as fond of a fiddle as she was of a rolling stone. Over the years, there have been scandalous and utterly unpersuasive rumours to suggest that there is some kind of physical resemblance between the uber left-wing and authoritarian Cuban dictator, seen here on the right, on the left, and the uber left-wing and authoritarian Canadian Prime Minister, seen here on the left, the right. As if to suggest that there might be some kind of genetic connection between the Canadian Prime Minister and the Cuban communist dictator, heavens above.
Now, you might very well think that, but of course I couldn't possibly comment.
Very interesting. It's a very interesting video, right? When Canadians love being noticed internationally, right? We love being noticed. We love when people talk about Canada. Oh, it's fun when The Simpsons mentions Canada, right? It's great. Although I haven't watched The Simpsons in years. I remember when The Simpsons was like must-see TV in the late 90s. And now, in my high school anyway, and now, if it's on, I guess it's kind of cringy still, right? It was cringy for a while in the early 2000s. Then they kind of tried to do the cutaways, like Family Guy became unwatchable. Then Family Guy became unwatchable. Then everything became unwatchable. Okay, back to this. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful